Has some handball, still a chance, is it a goal? It is! He's got the third goal! He's got the premiership! There's behind a little crossover, step back, wide open, and it's good! Got much help. Oh, he doesn't need any help. How about that?
This is the World of Sport.
Welcome to another episode of the World of Sport podcast, brought to you by Pizza Stratum Bar in North Dandenong. I'm here with Mitch and Joe, and big week of finals footy, big week of sport in general, but as Melburnians and one Queenslander, it was a big week of AFL and NRL football. We'll start with the AFL. Mitch, bit of a lackluster game, intense for the first quarter, but just sort of died off when Richmond took the game by the scruff of the neck and, well, put the sword to GWS.
Yeah, definitely the worst grand final, I think, in the last 10 years or so. Ever since that disgusting...
Yeah, the Port Adelaide game.
Yeah, piece of work that Port Adelaide put up. Pretty uneventful. The first quarter showed some signs. I thought it was going to be a tight contest, but Richmond just blew it away in three quarters.
Yeah, the Rioli goal at the end of quarter time really started the capitulation of GWS. There's a few, iffy umpiring calls, which probably cost GWS some momentum and just gave the kick up the bum to Richmond to continue or to go on and dominate the game. Not that I'm saying the ref or the umpires necessarily impacted the final winner, but I think it didn't help when the contest was on the line, some of the calls, as I said, in the big moments of the game. But in saying that, Richmond have been the best team for the last 3 years, best team probably this year as well, and I guess the end result proves that they're full value for their second premiership in 3 years.
Yeah, and as you said, the umpiring probably didn't help GWS in the first quarter.
Bit of Razor Ray magic, if you will.
Yeah, but after quarter time, they looked like they didn't even want to be there. They just rolled over, and Richmond just had their way with them. It was a bit embarrassing for them. Richmond, although it was a bit of a blowout, it was good to see that they weren't content with just
getting the premiership,
chucking it into second gear and leaving it there when they knew they had the game iced. They wanted to really put the sword through them and finish off on a really, really strong note. So that probably tells you how well they're coached and the sort of attitude they have, and maybe that gives them a lot of momentum going into next year.
The GWS of the last 3 weeks sort of disappeared, didn't it? You know, that hard, contested football, that, the grunt around the tackle, the contest, wherever the ball was, there was a bit of just, I don't want to use the swear word, but a bit of something in on top of in the contest as well, and it just sort of died. They, as you said, they just sort of rolled over and gave up as soon as the going got tough. It was really disappointing to see, because I thought that if they matched them in the contest and beat them in the contest, and that's how they get their win. But they seem content on passing around the back, chipping it around the back. I heard Lloydie say earlier today that when he was asking some people from GWS, they said that they were going to try tire out the Tigers by chipping them and making them chase the ball, but Tigers' pressure was just too immense. The kicking was poor. I think in the grand final, you got to allow for skill errors as well in your game plan, because, first grand final, a lot of young players, and you're expecting them to make, kicks, pressure-filled kicks in front of 100,000 on the mark, I thought it was just a bit silly.
Yeah, and you also got to account for the adrenaline of grand final day for the other team. So, that's going to get them over the line and help them run out 4 quarters, no matter how much ball you make them chase. So, but maybe that's just a bit of inexperience in grand finals showing through the GWS leadership group and coaching staff. But I mean, they're still a young team. There's plenty of upside to them, and they've been able to hold on to some really, really key cogs in their machine. So,
Pun intended.
yeah, I was going to see if that one could slip under the radar.
I think if they nail Cameron down, they'll get Cullen Ward back next year, Cogs as well, as you just punned. They have a really dangerous team going forward, young team as well, and they're only going to get better as well. A lot of youngsters coming through, a lot of players stepped up this season. Well, the likes of Hopper, and we always talk about Cameron, who's the common medalist, but Himmelberg, Finlayson. And, those guys sort of disappeared in the grand final. So it's a tough one for GWS to swallow, but the upside for next season and the future for them is bright. How they respond from the grand final determines their future. So if their club can go two ways, either down the drain, players leave, or that it'll galvanise them and they'll go on to great things, maybe even create a dynasty similar to Richmond's.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see in the coming seasons, but I guess sort of on a similar note, Dusty wins his second Norm Smith in as many grand finals. Now he's in sort of elite company in that sort of grand final performers, up there with Gary Ayres, Andy McLeod, and Luke Hodge, some of the biggest names when you talk about September action. I mean, none are bigger than those other three. So really putting his case forward to go down as one of the greats.
Yeah, exactly. He epitomised efficiency with the ball. 22 touches, 4 goals, and just every time he got the ball, something happened. It's not like some of the ball winners were Heath Shaw, Haynes. They're just backmen that are getting chip disposals at the back. Whereas when he gets it, something happens. He's just magic around the ball. So he doesn't need to rack up 30, 40, 50 possessions to wow you. He only got 22 on the day, and look what he was able to do.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, it helps when you can go forward and kick a handful of goals and really do some damage up in the forward line and do damage on the ball as well. So really a couple of facets to his game, and that's what a lot of the really good players like Dangerfield, Robbie Gray, they have that ability to play in multiple areas around the ground, and that's what separates them from the rest.
And the other big story of the grand final was, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's either Marlon or Marleon Pickett. First gamer, already has more premierships than almost everyone. Some story, 27-year-old comes in, kicks a goal, 22 possession, slowest 360 spin I've ever seen in footy, and got some votes for the Norm Smith as well. I don't think you could sort of write up a better fairy tale for him.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bold selection call by Dimmer Hardwick, but yeah, I mean, it paid off. Although, to be fair to GWS and everyone else on the field, I didn't hear his name called that much in the first quarter, so I think he started to get a few of those touches once GWS had essentially given up. So, but yeah, crazy story, and incredible for him, mature age player playing his first game, it's grand final, gets to walk home with a premiership medal.
Just speaks volumes of the Richmond system, that they trust their system and their players to just come in and do the job they give them. And that's probably why they've had so much success. It's one thing to get to a grand final, but it's another thing to follow that up with a premiership, a prelim, and a premiership in 3 years. So it just speaks so much for the club as a whole, as much as it pains me to say, because their fans can be, we won't go there, but you got to give credit to them, for someone like a Pickett to come in and he's got the system set up for him to succeed, which is just amazing. And similar to that, and what you said about Martin, Bashar Hooley now has 2 second best on grounds in a grand final. I mean, he's probably one of the nicest guys in footy, but he almost has gone down in history as with 2 Norm Smith medals, but he hasn't. So close yet so far. So, you got a feel for Bashar there, having 2, games of his life in grand finals and coming up with nothing. But I think he'll take the Premiership Cup every day of the week.
Of course, and that's what he'll say to everyone. No, take team effort. I'll take the Premiership Cup over the Norm Smith any day. But I think 2 years ago he was robbed, but he really couldn't go past Dusty this year.
From AFL to NRL, and not quite the grand final, but 1 week away from it, prelim week, and Joe, 2 unreal games. We'll start with the Canberra Raiders versus your Bunnies. Tough loss, but I mean, pride doesn't really come into it. You'd prefer a grand final, but proud of the performance, given you did everything to win. Just Canberra's defence, just I don't even know how to describe it anymore. It's just stepping up when it needs to, making unbelievable plays.
Yeah, Canberra are great up the middle. They have been for the last few years. They've got some really good guys in Josh Papali and Jack Whitten as well up the middle. It definitely helps. And especially come finals footy, the game slows down a lot, and it very often comes down to moving the ball up the middle of the field through your forwards. And Canberra just did that a lot better than the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs did have some guys out. James Robertson play, as well as some other guys, but I don't really think they're in this game. It was close, but you could just sort of see that Raiders are a bit of a step ahead at the moment.
Well, Papali had the game of his life. Almost 179 metres gained, 35 tackles, and a try as well to seal the game. It doesn't really get much better in terms of prelim performances, and I think he'll need to step up big time if they're going to have any chance against the Roosters next week, which we'll get to later.
Yeah, Josh Papali's been a bit of a work in progress. Queensland have been picking him intermittently for State of Origin for the last couple of years, since sort of like 2016, 2015. And he's got all the potential in the world, but just hasn't seemed to be able to string a good season together. He's had great games and he's had quite poor games, but especially recently, he's on a tear. The Raiders are getting him the ball when he needs it, and he's just executing. He's playing really, really well. And exactly what you said, he's going to need a massive game next week if the Raiders are even going to sniff at a premiership. He's going to have, and all of Canberra really are going to have the game of their lives to beat a very, very tough Sydney side.
In particular, I think it was Hodgson. His kicking game was excellent as well, kicking on fourth tackle, really pinning down the Bunnies in their 5 or 10 metres to their goal line. And then not only that, but for the forwards, and they all just got up there quickly, and then they're wasting tackles, similar to what the Roosters did to the Storm, but just wasting tackles, trying to get it out of their goal line, couldn't get any forward progress, pinning them back. And it also meant that they had to think twice, because maybe he's going to kick on the fourth tackle here as well. So a bit of indecisiveness potentially from the Rabbitohs, it was excellent from Hodgson and the Raiders.
Yeah, Hodgson played great. Like looking at Canberra, they had 6 forced dropouts. That's 6 repeated sets. That definitely adds up when you're talking about, they're just getting more sets. And exactly what you said, the Rabbitohs are getting it downfield, letting the ball bounce, not taking it on the full, and they're spending the first 2-3 tackles just trying to get out of their own 30. You're not going to play good footy like that. They were completing their sets, but because they were starting so far back, they just didn't have a lot of attacking options, really.
In saying that, the Rabbitohs had 10 more total sets and 8 more completed sets. They really forced the issue at points in the game. Canberra Raiders there's an analogy in football, NFL, with the defense, when a team lets in yards but doesn't let in touchdowns. They bend but don't break. And I thought that really epitomized the Raiders game. How long will it take before the Rabbitohs scored? And it just never came because they just kept bending but never let it in. They would make just try-saving tackles seemingly every set. But yeah, I don't really know how to describe how they defended. It was just immense, finals footy at its best.
Yeah, exactly what you said. The Rabbitohs, did have more sets, more run meters, more amount of runs, post-contact meters, line breaks, tackle breaks, every sort of thing that you'd think would point in the direction of a win, they had. But exactly what you said, Canberra would bend and bend and bend, but they never broke. It was a great effort by Canberra. It's been a long time coming. Canberra have not been a fantastic franchise since sort of Mal Meninga days of the late 80s, early 90s. They haven't had a ton of success. So it's good to see such a long-standing franchise that hasn't had a ton of success do well. And I think their fans are very grateful. But yeah, they're going to need a massive effort next week.
Yeah, I think it's been almost a quarter of a century since they last made a grand final. So, yeah, as you said, the fans' gratitude sort of manifested itself in the crowd numbers, packed house, and I'm not sure if you saw the Viking clap, but that was pretty cool as well. So
Yeah.
I think they're along for the ride regardless of what happens, and they're be pretty bullish for the future as well.
Yeah, exactly what you said. Canberra may not win the premiership this year, but they're going to be good for the next few years to come. And I'm sure their fans are super appreciative.
Yeah, well, when you build from the defense up, it just bodes well for success. So yeah, all credit to their coaching staff for doing a great job with their defense. It's been arguably the best all year. So most people aren't surprised that they're there, given defense wins championships or finals games.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Especially come finals footy, it's like I said before, it's very much based on the forward pack getting up and down the field. And Canberra have got one of the best forward packs in the game, so they're always going to be competitive.
And the Rooster Storm game, we were all watching it. There's a few eyebrows raised at some refereeing decisions when the game was, the game was close the whole time. But when Melbourne Storm could have, it's hard to say that the Storm would have gone on to win, but it definitely impacted the way the Storm played. I mean, I don't know how someone can not get sin bin for pulling someone's hair out and then whacking them in the face. I mean, I get pulling the hair out. He's got long hair. Sometimes it happens. But then using that to essentially not punch him in the face, but it was an arm straight to the chin. There was also the scrum to the Roosters when it was a knock-on by the Roosters. You'd think the bunker would just, talk in the ref's ears and just say, look, that's come off the Roosters player, and the Storm get the ball back in a repeated set. So that's just two incidents that I've got noted down here. But there was quite a few in the first half an hour that you just wonder what was going on. And I mean, full credit to the Roosters, they took full advantage of that. But you'd be pretty salty as a Storm player for what was happening from something you can't control.
Yeah, it was definitely the referees, I think, played a part in that game. Even from the first onset, first 20 seconds, there was a punch-up. Two guys sin-binned, which is the right call. But, Felici Kafusi did have his hair pulled. Yeah, Luke Keary, I don't see any way. I don't know how at any point you grab someone's hair and rip it from their head. I think it was a pretty poor move on Luke Keary's behalf. And then afterwards, to follow up with a high shot, Kafusi went off pretty much straight after for a HIA, but and he didn't return, but it turns out it was from a rib injury. Didn't have anything to do with it. But Luke Keary got put on report at the end of the game. Went to tribunal. They gave him like a $1,000 fine, $1,500 fine. Let him play next week. It was always going to happen. There was no way they were going to pull Luke Keary, especially because they set a precedent. I think it was last year or the year before. Billy Slater, I think he tripped some guy or he did something. We got put on report. I think he might have even got 10 minutes in the bin, and everybody was calling for him to be pulled. But the NRL is a business at the end of the day, and they're not in the business of pulling their best players the week before the grand final. So that was never going to happen. But yeah, it was a good game. The Storm have played the Rabbitohs a few times this year, and there's always a bit of beef that goes on between Latrell Mitchell and Will Chambers. They play same position, opposite each other in State of Origin. They play in their club footy, and it seemed like Will Chambers got the better of Latrell Mitchell. He didn't have a fantastic game, and I think that hurt the Storm quite a lot. He was making poor decisions, dropping the ball. So he's definitely going to have to switch on for next week. In saying that, I think the Roosters are going to clear Canberra pretty easily.
Well, similar to the Rabbitohs game, the Storm just won a lot of the stats that you would think would win them the game. Completion rate of sets 79% to 71%. More total sets, more completed sets, less incompleted sets, total runs, meters gained, offloads, one less line break, but tackles made. Less errors. It's just hard to see how the Storm. There was about a 20-minute period as well. Cooper Cronk made some excellent tackles as well with 5 meters, less than 5 meters to go to the try line as well. So tip your hat off to Cooper Cronk. He's a legend. We'll get to him in a sec. But it was a bit like the Raiders. Roosters were bending and not breaking, and that probably ended up winning them the game. I think Storm, it would have been 8-6 at the time, I believe. If they go on to score one of those, really great chances, 10-8, 12-8 potentially with a conversion, you'd probably back the Storm into to get the win in the end, but didn't break. Storm didn't score, and the Roosters ended up winning 14-6. So you just got to tip your hat off to the Roosters for winning when things aren't going their way.
Yeah, if anything, the Storm probably had a better chance than Canberra will to beat the Roosters. They just play a lot more clinical style of football, especially with Cameron Smith at the helm. Exactly what you said. If you didn't look at the score and just got the statistics, you would have thought there's no way that the Roosters would have won that game. But sort of here we are. James Tedesco played great, played fantastic at fullback as he always does. Cam Smith couldn't bother him too much with his kicking. Cam Smith also seemed more concerned with chatting to the referees than focusing on the game, which is, I get it, especially when some of the calls aren't going your way. But same thing happened last week. He got sent off for something pretty silly, punching a guy or striking or whatever they called it. So it's... Yeah, I think it's time for Cameron Smith to hang up the boots, in all honesty. The Storm have got a great young core at the moment. Cameron Munster, I forget the fullback's name, but he also played great.
Pappenhausen?
Yeah, Pappenhausen. Like, they've got some good young guys who are sort of early to mid-20s who can definitely... A good young forward pack, Felici Kafusi and some guys. And they're under 20...
Nelson's a beast as well.
Yeah, exactly. And their under-20s program is second to none. They really put a lot of emphasis on development of their own players. And it seems like Cameron Smith is not holding them back, but I think it's time to move on from him. He's one of the greatest to ever do it, but he's getting on in age. He's, I think, mid-30s. One of the first players to ever play 400 games as of the other day. But I think he's a bit past his use-by date.
Yeah, we'll see what he ends up doing. It's tough to go out on a prelim loss just for your own ego, but I wouldn't be surprised if he hung it up There's not really much more he needs to prove to anyone else. So, yeah, there's not really much more to say. But yeah, I completely agree. There's also Addo Carr, who's an absolute freak as well. So they have an unbelievable core. I'm not really sure who they'd replace him with. Would Munster?
Munster probably wouldn't play hooker. I'm sure. I'm almost positive. Hooker is a very common position for them to have a lot of depth in. There's a lot of depth at hooker. It's a relatively not easy, but
You don't
it's
need to be as big to.
no, but also it takes a lot less time to be a good hooker than it does to. It's like sort of being a good running back. It takes a lot less time than being a good quarterback. Like there's a lot more that goes into playing halfback or fullback or something like that, where you have to direct a team when you have the ball and on defense. Whereas hooker, it's a lot easier to learn. So I'm sure that the Storm have got a very
They probably have a succession strategy.
yeah, like I'm sure they have a very capable hooker who's playing under 20s at the moment who could step up next year, just like Cameron Munster did, just like Pappenhausen did. Like I said, their under 20s program is fantastic, especially if Craig Bellamy's still coaching. They're always going to be competitive. But yeah, Cameron Smith and especially Will Chambers. Will Chambers definitely needs to retire. These two guys. Will Chambers has cost the Storm more games this year than he's won for them. Yeah, he's they're just getting on, and yeah, I think it's definitely time to hang it up and give that spot to a young guy who's got a bit more potential.
Looking forward to the grand final. The Roosters and the Raiders. Who do you think's going to win and the score?
I think it's going to be a good game for the first half, but I think the Roosters are just a bit too clinical. They finished second and third in the ladder this year, but I think the Roosters have been there, have done that. They've won premierships very recently, always been competitive, and when you got Cooper Cronk steering your side around, you're always going to have a really, really good shot.
Well, it's his 9th grand final in 16 seasons, I believe, which is unreal. Given that I think Darren Lockyer only was in 4. So he's in his own company in this respect of NRL stats. But yeah, he was unreal against the Storm. I'm not entirely sure. It really depends what Canberra Raiders bring to the table. If they do a GWS, then it'll be a pretty quick game, over quite quickly. But if they bring the grunt and as you said, the forward, the centre, grunt that they're known for, the defense that they're known for, it could be a really great game, and they could just sneak over as well. So I think it'll be a great game either way, and I don't think I'm informed enough to make a decision, but I'll pick the Raiders just to be devil's advocate.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. I think a lot of it is really going to come back to Josh Hodgson, who steers the offense of Canberra around quite a bit, as well as Josh Papali, Blake Austin and stuff. They need their big guys up the middle to perform and play well. Otherwise, the Roosters are a very, very good football side. I don't think it's going to be a GWS Hawthorn situation, but I wouldn't be surprised if the score does get away from them a bit.
And another big, might end up being a fight in the NRL, but a big fight coming up next week as well in the UFC. Whittaker, the local man, he's coming up.
Yeah,
I forget.
Rob Whittaker's fighting Israel Adesanya.
That's his name.
So Rob Whittaker is the only Australian UFC champion at the moment, or ever, and he's fighting Israel. Israel's an up-and-coming guy from New Zealand, originally from Uganda, I believe. Nigeria, I think it is. But he's a Kiwi. It's going to be a good fight. It's easily going to be the biggest fight in Australian history in terms of live gate, people attending. And it is going to be a really good fight. I don't see any way that Rob Whittaker loses this fight. I don't know how Israel Adesanya plans on winning. Rob Whittaker is just a freak. Played footy when he was younger, was fantastic at that. He'd be wrestling for the Australian team in the Commonwealth Games if he wanted to. He won the trials and then just decided he didn't want to go. And he fought Yoel Romero, who's like the biggest genetic freak. Look at a guy and go, he's definitely on steroids, but he's not on steroids sort of looking guy. And one of the best welterweights in the UFC for the last 5-6 years. And Rob Whittaker beat him handedly twice. So it's definitely going to be a good fight. Rob Whittaker, I think, is definitely in with a win, but it's going to be a good fight either way, and it's going to be massive for MMA in Australia, and sort of the UFC in general.
All right, moving on to the NFL, another big week. We'll start with the Eagles, Packers. Big game for Philly to keep their season alive, and ended up coming away with the dub. Carson Wentz, 3 touchdowns. Big game for him. Mitch, you said that you're bullish on the Packers as a whole, but I think I'm a bit more skeptical than you are. But, you know, you can never discount a team with Aaron Rodgers at the back. How do you guys see the game?
Yeah, look, it kills me to say that the Packers are good. As a Bears fan, it kills me. But as you said, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, he threw for 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I mean, this game came right down to the wire, and the very end, it could have been a whole different story. But yeah, important win for the Eagles. They're sort of clawing back their season, and I think it's a very important win over the Packers, who I still think, even though they've had this hiccup, I still think they're very strong.
Yeah. I think the Packers need to fix a few chinks. I think there's been a lot of talk that Rodgers has been frustrated with the coaching staff, and you know, there's been a few heated arguments on the sideline. So I think Green Bay will always be great with Aaron Rodgers, but there's a few weaknesses that are pretty clear in my eyes. And I mean, big win for the Eagles. They desperately needed it. So much potential in that team. Carson Wentz, new contract, but
I mean, it made it even sweeter, the Packers losing, when ex-Bears players did all the damage to them. So Jordan Howard, two rushing touchdowns and a fair chunk of yards. So, I mean, if any good could come out of that game, it was that.
Another big game, Cleveland and Baltimore, you know, big divisional game, big rivals, and given the quarterback and the Brown situation with Mayfield, a lot of pundits coming out saying he's overrated. Lamar Jackson coming out and just, being Lamar. I mean, after the game, the typical Lamar fashion, the media was like, "Oh, we heard you're a little banged up. Something happened with your knee," and he looked confused while the question was being asked. Ran on the spot and said, "Nah, I'm good." So typical Lamar being Lamar, but a big game in terms of the division and probably the Browns. Probably the Browns season as a whole. It'd be tough to come back from 1-3, but now they sit pretty on top of the AFC North and beat a red-hot Baltimore team who had a lot of people, pun intended, raving. Don't give me that look, guys. But yeah, the Browns held Lamar Jackson, you know, in check, and he wasn't really able to do anything with his feet or his arms. And at the other end, the Browns, Baker Mayfield really got the ball rolling.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said. It was a big game, especially for Baker Mayfield. Did not have a great first 3 weeks. Exactly what you said. A lot of people coming out saying he's overrated and whatnot. He had a really good game. 20 for 30 attempts, 340 yards. Like, he had a very good game. Definitely having Nick Chubb run for 165 yards and 3 TDs.
I was about to say the same thing.
It helps a lot. But yeah, Baker Mayfield had a good game, especially against the Baltimore defense, especially their secondary is really, really good.
The likes of Humphrey and stuff.
Exactly. So like they have some fantastic they have a fantastic secondary with like Earl Thomas and stuff like that. So I think it was a big confidence boost for Baker Mayfield and the Browns as a whole. Baltimore are not a bad team. They've been playing pretty well. So I think this was quite a decent cap, quite a decent feather in Cleveland's cap. And exactly what you said, I think it's definitely sort of steered the ship for their season. And
At least for another week.
And got it back on track. I don't know who they're playing next week, but definitely the 49ers. So
Thanks, stats guy.
I think the Browns should win that as well. And then, they win next week and they're 3-2. And that's, it's quite a big swing from a potential 1-3. So
Yeah.
I think it was a good game.
Jarvis again, 167 yards.
Yeah, I think Jarvis Landry also gets a lot of kind of what Juju got last year, where it's when you've got a guy like Odell Beckham, who's going to demand double coverage most of the time. It's usually that secondary receiver. Jarvis Landry's a fantastic receiver, obviously.
yeah.
But when you have someone demanding that double coverage attention, kind of like AB and Juju last year, you tend to find that those secondary receivers generally have big seasons.
Oh yeah, gets a lot underneath when players, as you quite rightly said, are preoccupied with Odell Beckham, and rightly so. The guy's a freak. Not his arm, but his catching, as we saw in the game. They probably should put a pin in that play for the rest of the season. But yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. The Ravens. Don't really know where it leaves them. I wonder if this season for them is more about developing for the future. Lamar's still young, but in saying that, you still have such a talented roster around Lamar and Mark Ingram, Snead again.
I think they definitely could have got Mark Ingram the ball a lot more too. Mark Ingram had a great game last week and the week before as well. Mark Ingram's been playing fantastically. He's been playing like Heisman Mark Ingram, not Kim Kardashian Mark Ingram. So I definitely think they could have afforded to get him the ball a bit more, especially seeing the damage that Nick Chubb was doing on the other end.
Yeah, I think the really concerning part of the Ravens' loss, at least from what I could see, is that every time the pocket collapsed for Lamar, it sort of was like panic stations in his head. He would scramble. Yeah, he'd keep his eyes up, but it almost felt like he was trying to break ankles and see what he could do with his feet, getting first downs. And we know he's a great runner, but I think dual threat quarterbacks are at their best when they're passing and they're giving it to the running back, because then the defense already has their hands full with stopping the run, stopping the passing lanes. Oh, excuse me. And then you just sort of pull a QB keep out of nowhere and you burn them for 20, 30, 40 yards when you need it in the game. I just felt like he looked to run when the pocket collapsed far too often, whereas you see Daniel Jones, he'll move up into the pocket as the pocket forms and take the hit as he's throwing the ball. Whereas I feel like Lamar Jackson needs a clean pocket for him to get the ball out. And it's not a bad thing, but it can make a team struggle like they did against the Browns when the pocket kept collapsing and he kept being in two minds. Do I scramble? Do I pass? What do I do? And I think that will come with experience. I think he's got everything there to be a great quarterback, but at the moment, his decision-making at that time, the pocket collapsing is scary, especially when Myles Garrett is coming in. So I'd understand that. But, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, exactly like you said. And it's not like he doesn't have options either. Like he's got Marquise Brown, Willie Snead. He's got attacking options. Mark Ingram in the backfield. Like he it's not like he's on an island out there by himself and needs to make everything happen. But he's young. I think it's just going to come. I think you're going to get a very Cam Newton-esque career from Lamar Jackson.
Not surprised.
I don't know if he's going to make that next step. He's going to always be great on his feet. He'll have good throwing games, bad throwing games, but I just don't know if you're ever going to get that pass first sort of consistency that you're going to get from a, Tom Brady, Manning, Patrick Mahomes, those guys who look to pass first. I just don't know if he just has those instincts because he knows he always has his feet to rely on. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I like what you just said. He knows that he has his legs to rely on, and that can be a blessing, but also a curse. And as I said just before, it needs to be the last resort. It needs to be, your third and long or, whatever, and the pocket collapses and you surprise the day with a QB keep run for 20 yards and bang, first down. But if that's what you look to do, then you're just taking away from the running game, from the passing game, and it's really easy to just put a QB spy and sort of start to break down the offense and make Lamar panic or make Cam Newton panic or whoever, and they become very one-dimensional. So I think for the Ravens to succeed long-term with Jackson, they need to just say, all right, put your legs away. If you need them in a game, go for it. Like, if you need them in a game, go for it. But we won't call any QB keep plays. And we want you, at the moment, to stay in the pocket. And if you get hit in the pocket, all right, we're building for your career. We're not building for this season. And you got to learn to stay in the pocket. So I think that's a big sticking point, at least for me. What the Ravens see, I don't know. That's why they get paid and not me.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. And it's not like he's running poorly. Like, he's averaging 7 yards, a carry. But at what cost are you taking that 7 yards? Is there a 20-yard chunk that you're missing out on because you're choosing to run, sort of thing? So exactly what you said. I think I'm not sure what their game plan is, whether they're trying to win now or build for the future. But I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah. Next, another big game, the Chiefs. Ooh, let me just get to my notes. Good win against sort of an underrated Detroit Lions. Both undefeated going into the game, and Detroit really pushed them. Nice comeback. Took the lead a couple times as well late on. But we were talking earlier. It's kind of a good sign for the Chiefs if this is a bad Mahomes game. I mean, he rushed for 54 yards, which is unheard of for him to rush full stop, let alone do all right with it. No touchdowns, I think.
Yeah, he should have had one, but yeah, Watkins sort of dropped a sitter in the end zone. But yeah, no touchdowns.
No touchdowns.
No interceptions too.
No interceptions. 315 yards. Almost a 50% completion rate. A bit higher than that. But, I mean, I admitted 2 weeks ago that I was now sold on Patrick Mahomes. And this is why. Because a game like this is bad for him. And it's still unbelievable that they can put up 34 points and beat a Lions team who put up 30 of their own. And this is a bad game. I mean, Detroit are by no means a bad team either. I mean, Matthew Stafford is a very underrated quarterback. But this is a bad game for the Chiefs. I mean, like, he's the real deal.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I've been saying it for, since sort of late last year. Patrick Mahomes is definitely the real deal. I think, in a way, it is a good game, like a good sign that they could also win sort of like a grind out game that came down to the last drive, and they could perform, sort of clutch up when they needed to. But the Chiefs' defense needs big work. If they're letting in 30 points against the Lions, who Matthew Stafford had a pretty good game, but who was their top receiving target? Kenny Golladay, who played well, but he's no.
Marvin Jones, 77 yards.
But you're not coming up, because this is all going to come down to the AFC champion, with Kansas City and the Pats.
They don't have your your clear number one wide receiver who would walk into any team and be their number one receiver either.
Exactly. So, like, I think when they come up against like a Tom Brady and the Patriots, with all the weapons that they have, I think Kansas City.
How are you going to stop them?
I think Kansas City are going to struggle. And when you're playing from behind, like Patrick Mahomes is really, really good, but he can only do so much. So Kansas City definitely need to tighten up their defense. Obviously, Tyreek Hill's out at the moment as well. So
that's just one receiver.
Well,
That doesn't help the D.
No,
which is what you're saying.
It doesn't, but it definitely helps the Chiefs. Like Travis Kelce is always going to be their main target, and Sammy Watkins and LaShawn McCoy. But yeah, Tyreek Hill will be nice when he comes back. But yeah, it's definitely going to be. I'm not sure who they're playing next, but
Stats guy.
Kansas City. But yeah, Kansas City's defense needs work, and if they're letting 30 points in on the Lions, I'm very worried to see what New England, Cleveland, even the Bucks are going to put on them.
Do you reckon the lateral was a planned move or a just a spur of the moment thing? Before you answer, there was the commentator, and I quote said, "That was sick," which is pretty funny coming from like a 60-year-old or whatever, however old he is, commentator. I don't know. I just thought I burst out laughing when I heard that. But do you reckon it was planned or?
I don't know if it was planned per se for that particular play, but no, actually, I don't think it was planned at all. I think Travis Kelce just saw it and decided to pop it off. It was definitely a great play, something I'm not sure why a lot of teams don't utilize it more, but no, I don't think it was. I don't think you could. I think it was similar to sort of like the Odell catch last year. I don't think you could say that was planned in any way, shape, or form. I think it was just a product of the game.
Why don't you think teams don't do that more?
I don't know. I don't know enough to speak on that, but I think what you mentioned before when we were chatting, that I think it's just a safety thing. Laterals, pitches, especially in the flow of the game, not something that these guys have really done in their football careers, I'd imagine. You know what I mean?
It's not natural to them as opposed to rugby where offloading is part and parcel of getting tackled.
Yeah, and the ball's a bit different as well.
Also with, sorry to interrupt, but also with rugby, you know that your players are behind you and the opposition isn't behind you. Whereas in NFL, it's 360 once you get tackled or catch the ball and you're in the secondary of the opposition. So it becomes more of a risk factor in it.
Yeah, that's a good point. But even on like kick returns and stuff like that, it's very similar to rugby in terms of the defense is right in front of you and you just never see laterals or pitches or anything like that. Obviously, you see like a quick pitch from the quarterback, like a toss or something like that. But in terms of like a traditional lateral or a pitch, I'm not sure why they don't do it more often, but I'm sure somebody who knows a lot more than me would be able to tell you.
Well, there must be a very good reason why 32 teams in the NFL don't do it. And we're just imbeciles who have no idea what we're talking about. But it's, at least for us, it's a little bit of a head scratcher why they don't maybe try something on third down or, when the game's on the line and you desperately need a quick touchdown to do a little, maybe an in route with a drag that goes underneath the in and it's a quick draw all the players into the in or to a curl into the middle of the field. I don't know like what they would call.
If you're going to run a double reverse to Odell Beckham to throw it 80 yards downfield, I don't think a pitch is all that much worse when it comes to safety and your risk to reward factor. So
especially if the game's on the line, you got to do something different. So who knows? Maybe we're just forward thinkers and ahead of our time, and the Patriots in the Super Bowl will be down against, I don't know, who will it be, the Saints or something, or they'll be the championship game.
Yeah, the AFC Championship game, I think, will be the Super Bowl this year in terms of whoever's going to win that. I think it's going to go
whoever's down, need 2 touchdowns in 4 minutes. Tom Brady throws it to, I don't know.
I've heard worse ideas.
Rex Burkhead or whatever comes out of the backfield, goes into the middle, gets the ball, catches it. Everyone's like, sweet, we've got him. This is down. Quickly pitches it to Edelman, and Edelman runs for a touchdown and starts the Patriots comeback. Oh, man, that sucks already, and it hasn't even happened yet. Patriots would win again. But I feel like that'd be something the Patriots would think up, or the Eagles after what they did with Foles in the Super Bowl.
That's a good point.
What's the next game? We'll quickly touch on the New Orleans and the Cowboys game, or the Dallas game if I'm going to go with the city. A big win for the Saints. They've gone 2-0 without their main man, who I think has missed no games or one game or a handful of games since 2006 or something. Teddy Bridgewater comes in, and against they played the Seahawks last week, didn't they? Yeah. And they're 2-0 against the Seahawks and the Cowboys without Breeze. I think most Saints fans would have gone into, post Breeze injury saying, Bridgewater, please just leave us in a position where Breeze can come in and take us to the playoffs. Now he's got them 2 wins out of their two difficult games. They kept Elliott to 1.9 yards per carry, which is absurd. So, big win for the Saints. And, Joe was saying earlier that Bridgewater is not as bad as everyone says, and I agree. You give any quarterback a line, and they'll be better than what people actually think, especially when the previous games he had no line and was just running for his life. But it also helps to have Alvin Kamara in the backfield and, Michael Thomas and a lot of those players. But a disappointing win for America's team in the Cowboy. Disappointing loss for America's team. Dak Prescott probably doesn't do his MVP candidacy any favors. Hey, that's what the NFL website said. He was an MVP candidate. But it's sort of they played 3 absolute rubbish teams, come up against a good team, and then kind of get banged up. I don't know what the word is, but kind of see that all over. I'm not sure if this is a true reflection of the Cowboys. Could have just been not used to the pace of playing actually a team that knows what they're doing, and not Miami. So I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks.
I think it's also embarrassing when you lose to a team whose offense didn't score a touchdown. I think they've got to look at that, and that's a bad loss for the Cowboys.
Yeah. We'll leave that one there. I'll literally give it 30 seconds. Daniel Jones, great game, another great game, beat Washington. He did throw 2 picks, but the way he responded was excellent. Came back, put his head down, and kept going, and was full value for the 24-3 beating the Redskins. The Chicago Bears Vikings game. What more can you say about the Chicago defense, Mitch? It's just top 3. I don't know.
3?
Top 1.
Yeah, please. Top 1. They held them out for the whole first 3 quarters. They didn't even look like scoring, and then scored 2 field goals in the second half of the fourth quarter to sort of crawl back to a little bit of a respectable margin. But I think the biggest problem for Chicago is it's tough to get the offense moving. And they have the defense there that can win games and can win almost any game for them. But the offense is doing them no favors. They're getting 3 and outs and not spending enough time on the field to give the defense enough of a rest on the sideline. And you see that in the second half against the Redskins last week, and in the fourth quarter this week, it takes its toll, and the other team begins to start being able to drive the field a bit more easily. So I think that's something they'll look at, and hopefully they address and can get worked out before we come up against a team with a really strong offense like a Kansas City or the Rams or something like that, where we're going to need both our offense and defense firing if we want to have a chance.
Well, the Bears played without Akeem Hicks and Roquan Smith in their defense and still killed the Vikings. And the Vikings are by no means a pushover. You have Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs. I mean, Kirk Cousins, yeah, whatever. Xavier Rhodes as well on the other side of the ball. I mean, they have a seriously good team. They did the same as the Bears, built from the defense up, and the Bears just I don't even know what more to say about their defense. I mean, Khalil Mack is just being Khalil Mack, just a home wrecker. I mean, how high the ceiling is for the Chicago Bears is a different story, because as you said, rightly said, there needs to be both sides of the ball to win a championship. And at the moment, the defense is outscoring the offense, which is sad, which is abysmal from the Bears, especially with Trubisky going out as well. His replacement, he doesn't have the arm talent or the strength of Trubisky, but he's a game manager. And that's not necessarily a bad thing when you have a defense that's that bloody good.
No, he's a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
He's the guy that
And
comes
rightly
in
so.
and just does not throw the game away. And that's what you need from him. And so, I mean, I think he played really well, 195 yards. You can't sneeze at that, especially as a guy that games are few and far between. But yeah, I mean, I think it was just a good divisional win and move on, work on the offense for next week.
Yeah. I wouldn't take this win lightly as well. Big win against a very, very good Minnesota team. Sorry. The Bucks shocked the Rams. I think we all thought the Rams were going to go out of week 4 4-0, but no. The Bucks just came out of nowhere. Bruce Arians finally has started to get Jameis Winston looking like the first rounder that he was predicted to be, and is just piling on the stats with Winston. And okay, their defense needs to step up a little at 40 points in, but 55 points against what many have thought was an excellent defense in the Rams. Man, you can't turn a blind eye or say that that's a fluke or anything. I think he's put up like close to 1,000 yards in the last 2 weeks. So the kid is playing really well. I mean, 385 yards in this game, 4 TDs, 1 interception. My oh my! And they have a very good receiving core: Godwin, Evans, OJ Howard. Woo. So if Arians can get his offense going, Bucks might do something. I mean, they're 2-2, should have been 3-1 with a missed field goal against the Giants. So yeah, not really much more to say. A great, important win for the Bucks season, and I think leave their fans very happy and bullish for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think this is a blight on the LA Rams. People talk about the Rams' defense being solid, but I think you can't say that a defense is solid when they let in 55 points. And I remember last year they let in over 50 against the Chiefs. And yeah, the Chiefs are a strong offensive unit, but if you're trying to build your game on a strong defense, then that's a disgrace. And also on the other side of the field, how are you going to have one of the best running backs in the NFL but give him the ball 5 times? I think, yeah, maybe they wanted to manage the clock a little bit.
Of course they wanted to manage the clock, Mitch.
But you got to score points. I mean, they lost by 15 points and Todd Gurley got the ball 5 times. He's a guy that can just run for days on end. So,
but when you're behind 21-0 with 5 minutes left in the first half, you got to manage the clock. You got to say, all right, we're just going to pass for the rest of the game. If it's a complete, great, we get yards. If it's incomplete, great, the clock stops. So you just have to do it.
Yeah, but I mean, would you rather an incomplete pass and you save 10 seconds on the clock, or Todd Gurley going 23 yards down the field? I mean,
Well,
it's
you don't know that it's going to be 23 yards or an incomplete. I understand that you have a premier running back in the backfield, but I also understand that you're 28 points behind and the game's starting to run out of time. You're just going to go pass heavy to make sure that you have plenty of time to make the comeback and not leave it to the last second.
yeah. I mean, I guess,
and that's a coaching decision. That's
it's
not my
not
decision. I'm just saying that I completely understand why they did it, and the coach came out and said that that's what he decided to do, to score points and stop the clock. And it didn't work for them today, so maybe they'll go with your strategy and give it to Gurley next time and try to grind out a win, 24-21 or something, instead of having a shoot-off. So, I mean, you take them, you learn from them, and go to the next game. So I'm just saying that I completely understand why they did it, and it's all about the clock when you're behind by that much.